Welcome to the #1 show and the source of truth for all things MedTech. Here, we reveal the secrets and stories behind the investments, science, and commercialization of the MedTech industry. Every week, we'll take you on a wild ride with the biggest names in the game, from entrepreneurs and investors who are shaking up the market to healthcare providers who are revolutionizing the way we think and practice medicine. So hold on tight and get ready for a journey like no other. This is the State of MedTech. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. So this episode is on sales, but more specifically about sales enablement. I think whether you're a rep or a VP of sales, you should understand this. So let's cover a couple of things. Number one, the sales environment in MedTech has changed. It's become a lot more difficult and sophisticated, right? If you're launching, whether you're launching a product at a Stryker or Medtronic or your startup, identifying the right adopters, specifically early adopters, is not easy. Now, we all try to find the right adopters who's going to proliferate the technology, meaning that they're going to be a big time user of the technology, talk about it, etc. It's not so obvious anymore. We used to think that it would be the person who goes up on podium very often, or let's say publishes a lot of papers. And if you talk to anybody who's launched a product or even been in a startup, it's rarely that person. And so this is where using sales enablement technology and software helps a lot, specifically databases where you can look up physicians, their procedure volume, the societies they're a part of, information that helps you narrow down and target exactly who you should be going after. A couple of problems that I've always ran in with these companies is, number one, a lot of times their databases are really clunky. You almost need like a data scientist or an admin to help you sift through it. That's number one. The second thing, which is more annoying, is they're often extremely expensive. And what really ticked me off is that all these companies over the years, when I go look at their websites, they never show you the price. And the reason why they don't show you the price is because they want to see how much money you've raised or how big your company is. And then they're going to give you a different price than somebody else, which I personally don't like, the lack of price transparency. And so over the years, I've tried different platforms, and some of them are good, some of them are okay. And then Paul-Lukas Hoffschmidt, who's the guest today, reached out to me, and I was really skeptical, to be honest with you, about their platform at first, but then I got a demo and played around with it. And I really like it. So Paul is the founder of Sophia, which means first wisdom. And their platform is essentially a software that helps you find and target early adopters. You're able to search through procedure volume, find their social media handles, etc. But what I like is that they're really transparent. It costs like $300 a month per user, which is amazing, compared to a lot of other platforms, which cost $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. I won't mention which ones. And so I wanted to have Paul on to kind of talk about his company, their vision, and like how he sees the selling environment in MedTech. Me personally, I like the platform. And so for him, I told him, hey, if you're going to come on my show, if I'm going to support what you guys do, I want a really good offer for my audience. And they gave me one. So whether you are a rep or an associate or VP, a CEO, doesn't matter. If you go to alphasophia.com/Omar, that's ALPHASOPHIA.com/Omar, enter your information and you're going to get 3 free profiles for free. So essentially, you can tell them the procedure that you're trying to look into. You can give them a surgeon, a hospital, whatever, and they'll do these 3 searches and give you the report for free. And of course, in that process, you'll be able to get a demo of their technology, which is extremely straightforward. And if you decide to use them, hey, it's only $300 a month. And I think for each additional user, I'm not sure how much more it is, but it's actually like less than that. So really affordable. I absolutely love it because this is an affordable option for startups, for founders who are trying to get started. Like, they can't afford to pay a $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 license, and I advise them not to. So with that being said, this is our episode with Paul-Lukas Hoffschmidt. Enjoy. Welcome back to the show, everybody. So I'm joined by a new friend of mine. That's Paul-Lukas Hoffschmidt, who's the CEO and founder of Sophia. So, we've talked a lot on this show about the importance of like being data-driven today. For me, it's not a good strategy for any CEO of a medtech company to say, hey, we're going to raise money and then we're going to hire a bunch of reps who worked in this certain specialty, right? Because think of it like this, every major KOL that you can think of has already been taken or associated with a company. So the idea is like every medtech company who, from Intuitive to anything else, who had like a big product that got adopted, right? It was always a KOL or an early adopter that nobody thought of, right? And so that's where we need data. There's a lot of players out there, and I've checked out different platforms, and I think a lot of them are really good, but this one, Alpha Sophia, has stood out to me for various reasons. And so, Paul, thanks for joining the show. I want to talk a little bit about your background, like why did you start Alpha Sophia, and then I kind of want to talk more details about like the mission, and more importantly, like what makes Alpha Sophia differently. So, Paul, thanks for joining the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks. It's great to be on board, Omar. Nice to join you today here.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So, Paul, like maybe for the listeners who are just learning about you, can you give like a little bit of background of yourself? Like, where'd you grow up, go to school? What's your professional background? And we'll get to Alpha Sophia.
Sure, let's do that. So I actually grew up in Cologne, Germany, and then moved to the UK for 3 years, finished my school time there, studied there, then moved back to Germany. And then I actually studied philosophy back in the day. So actually coming from the humanities side.
Who's your favorite philosopher, if you had to pick one? Always a tough one, but
my favorite one, yeah. I'm actually like really interested in Ludwig Wittgenstein, which is about logic and that domain. But yeah, that would basically be a little bit too much to go into much more detail today in that session. But and then afterwards, I actually somehow ended up in a strategy consulting firm. Worked for an American company, Oliver Wyman, which is a subsidiary of Marsh McLennan, and then starting from there, my whole focus of my career was basically always helping commercialize products in all sorts of domains. I've done that in the retail space, in the consumer goods space, in the manufacturing space, and that's basically like a common theme in everything I've done, helping companies bring out their products to the customers who really need that, and educate those customers about the products so that they get implemented the fastest. And then at some point, 6 years ago, I believe, I started also working together with startups on the side, helping them in their commercial growth stories. Did that with a couple of companies in all different domains. But then a few years ago, I started working with a medical device company here in Germany. And we found out when we did the initial market sizing, try to get into the industry, how difficult it can be to actually find reliable data, insightful data about the healthcare space at a reasonable price. And especially when you're a startup just getting things started and you want to do market sizing, you want to understand who are your potential customers to get like first interviews, customer demos, and so on. You usually can't afford those hefty price tags of a few $100,000 or tens of thousands of dollars to get started, but you want to be a little bit leaner and get into the market. And that's actually the first time I was confronted with that problem of getting reliable commercial intelligence in the healthcare market, and then working on a solution for that.
Amazing. And I saw that you have your own venture firm, which is Hoffschmidt Ventures. So you do a little bit of angel investing. Just out of curiosity, like, what kind of companies do you like to invest in?
So I'm actually, with that firm, I'm quite open when it comes to the industry. What I like the most is investing in companies who are really early stage. So pre-seed, even before that, when the team is just getting assembled. And I usually aim to help those founders develop the initial ideas, test their hypotheses, and then build an MVP and bring that to the customers. So that's my sweet spot. At the moment, I'm also focused on building Alpha Sophia, growing and working with those startups I've invested in the past. But from an industry's perspective, the range is quite big. So I do have a few companies in the healthcare space in there, but then also companies in the renewable energy space or in just enterprise software. So it's quite broad.
Nice. That's fantastic. So, you have a pretty broad career. So like of all the things, like why did you choose to go into, I guess you can call it like data and sales enablement in healthcare? What kind of led you to that and start Alpha Sophia?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the initial starting point was working with that German medical device company, where we really struggled finding reliable data. And then also my co-founder, Robin, who's our CTO, he's kind of like the hacker guy. He started coding when he was 12, building his first products still in his childhood bedroom. He actually also worked as a consultant at Oliver Wyman, so we met at that place, and he was actually an intern on my team on a project we did together. And he also worked for a large pharmaceutical distributor, and also saw how difficult it is to develop sophisticated commercial strategies in the healthcare space from that perspective. And looking at that, our background with helping commercializations in industries which are already more matured, like retail, for example, where everything is data driven, where you measure the uplift of any single promotion, of any single advertisement. And then looking at in the healthcare industry, where there's already a lot going on, especially in pharma, but then even further in medical device, where it's still a little bit more behind, we just felt that that's an area where we really can make a difference and bring that up to the next level with the experience we have made in other industries in the past.
Nice. So before we talk shop, I actually never asked this question before, but I'm curious, like, why the name Alpha Sophia? How did you guys come up with the company name?
It's quite an interesting question. It's ancient Greek and means something like first wisdom. And it's a little bit our company philosophy, providing that first wisdom on different levels. Yeah, on a company level, when you're just starting up and you want to know where to go and which subdomain of a certain therapeutic problem do I want to build my medical device in, for example. But then also as a salesperson, as a marketeer at a more established company, deciding where should I go, where should I meet my customers, who are those customers, who are the right providers to talk to. And then actually getting those first insights on this first wisdom on those, how do I approach them adequately? What information can I get on them beforehand? Do they publish? Are they on social media? Are they rather innovative and progressive, or are they rather cost conscious? So collecting all the background information to then craft marketing and sales approaches in a way which create the bigger bang for the money in the end for your company.
Fantastic. So, the thing, again, like I've kind of spoken with a lot of the major players who are in this space, all good people. But what I will say that stood out about you guys, that you're very specific about developing, that your company mission is specifically around startup companies, right? Why is it? I mean, you can clearly make a lot more money going after like the Medtronics of the world and charging like a larger enterprise fee. So why did you guys decide to focus on like startups?
Yeah, so we focus on startup companies and SMBs, and we also work together with bigger companies. But we wanted to focus on those innovators, because if you look at the medical device industry, of course, a large part of the market size is being consumed by big medtech. But at the same time, if you just look at the pure company count, there's a vast tail of companies who are smaller, distributorships, startups, SMBs who are specializing in certain niches, and so on. And we just saw that those companies are at the moment completely cut out of the healthcare analytics, healthcare commercial intelligence market, because they oftentimes just can't afford spending those big dollars on some of the competitor products, which are great, but if you don't have them, they can be as great as you want. They don't help you in your commercialization. So we focus on this part of the market at the moment, secondly, if you just look at the healthcare market in general, a lot of the innovation, of the progress when it comes to new devices, new innovations, they are actually being developed by those smaller companies and not by the largest ones. And helping them bring that out faster, bring those products out faster, even if they might join a larger company later on, just helps the patient in the end getting access to those innovations at a faster rate.
Fantastic. Yeah, I really like that too, because like I'll be honest with you, I mean, I've been in this industry for over 10 years, and I think like maybe one company we were able to afford Definitive Healthcare at the time. And Definitive is like, I don't know, it's like upwards of like 40 or 50K a year. It wasn't cheap. They have a good platform. But again, like a lot of times, especially as a head of marketing, I was just like, man, for that much money, I was like, why don't we just use that on commercializing the product, versus,
Sure.
And so for you guys, you're at a very, very competitive price point. Do you mind if I mention the price point on the show? Sure. So like you guys start out essentially at $300 a seat, which at that level, I mean, if a rep was really, really motivated, I mean, a rep could even afford to pay for that. Although if you're a rep, I recommend not doing that. Get your company to pay for this. Yeah, but yeah, $300 a month. It's great. And I know that you guys are doing, I appreciate you offering that to my audience, which if you're interested, you can go to alphasophia.com/Omar and you can get 3 free profiles done. So obviously there's a demo, but part of that live demo is that they're going to give you those free profiles. Maybe something... I guess I want to touch real quick just on the funding amount and the team, if you can just touch on that real briefly. But then after that, I want to get into like what makes you guys different. But yeah, how much have you guys raised to date? What's your team look like? Yeah,
so we started off in 2022. So we're about 1.5 years old now. We are a team of 7 people at the moment. And we did a pre-seed funding round in the beginning of this year where we raised $1 million. In venture capital funding from investors from both sides of the Atlantic, from the US, but also from Europe. Many of them people who have been in the healthcare industry for a long time with a lot of experience, which really support us understanding which areas we should further innovate to make our product even better every day. So I'm really glad for the support from our investors. Our philosophy really is to practice what we preach. Yeah? So we keep our company really efficient and lean as an A team of developers and commercial people, so that we in the end also can provide that price point to our customers. And then we do that at every point of how we interact with our customers. So I mean, if you can book a demo on our website directly with me within the next days, and then jump on a call if you like the product, we can set you up in hours, and then we schedule a demo session. So it's really efficient, and you don't have to go through lengthy contract negotiations and so on. So we try to keep things as efficient as possible on our side as well.
Fantastic. So let's talk about the product itself. The one thing that I would say is that because there's very little proprietary data in this space, right? So a lot of it's pretty much based on what each company is what data they're able to provide, the way they provide it. Like what makes Alpha Sophia different from the other competitors that are out there?
Yeah. So I think what really makes us different is that we de-silo a lot of different data sources and bring them together in one tool and make them easily accessible by salespeople, by marketeers. You don't have to study data science to use the tool, to then go in there and slice and dice through multiple dimensions at once to end up with targeting lists and which really fit your product on the one side, but also your marketing and sales campaign you're running. So let me make an example. Yeah? So you could just jump in there and then say, okay, at the moment there are loaded 2.8 million healthcare practitioners in the tool, but I'm actually marketing a certain new implant for the market. And then you could say, show me all orthopedic surgeons, maybe in a certain area. So you focus on Texas, and then you select Texas, and it reloads. And within a second, you only get orthopedic surgeons in Texas. And then you can go further and say, okay, but actually, I don't want to interact with anyone who had financial relationships with my competitors in the past. So you could actually select in another filter, exclude everyone who had any financial ties to my competitors in the past. So you do that. And then you could say, oh, well, I'm looking for people who are also quite innovative in the beginning, who are also have co-developed in the past other medical devices maybe. And then you could select, okay, show me of those, only those who have received royalty payments in the past as an identifier of those who have co-developed products in the past with manufacturers. And then further, you would say, I don't know, we're a small company. We don't have a sales rep in every city just yet. Yeah. So I want to engage with those people on social media initially. So you could select of those people who are still in that focus group, only show me those who are also on LinkedIn. And then you end up with a really precise targeting list. You then can export to your CRM or just handle it in our tool. Our tool actually also acts as I always call it a CRM light system or a CRM for prospecting. And then start your commercial operations just out of the tool.
I will say, that's something I do like. And again, like, I can't say like, like some of those other tools that are out there, I haven't used them personally, but a lot of times what I've seen is that they're really complicated and there's a lot of great features, but most reps and sellers don't need those features, which is why they don't use it. This is why a lot of reps don't really care about using a CRM. What I liked about, and this is what kind of stood out, because when you guys first reached out, I was skeptical and I was like, all right, like this is another company that's doing this. Let's see what they have. And at least when you guys walked me through the demo, I was like, wow, this is really easy and simple to use, which is, what I often look for my audience that's on the sales side, because I'm not going to have them use something that I personally wouldn't use. Tell me a little bit more about like why you guys incorporate social media into the database, and how do you think reps can use that?
I told you earlier that I personally started off in my strategy consulting career in retail, and already back in 2010 in retail, the big thing was going omni-channel and approaching the customer from all sorts of direction at the same time to create as many customer touch points as possible, which then ultimately lead to a sell. I mean, there's this saying in marketing that you need to create, I think, 7 touch points with the customer to build up trust with yourself, your brand, and your product to then sell to those customers. And now in medical device, I'm just seeing that this is not implemented and used at the scale as it is already being used in other industries. So we made that really a priority to incorporate that into our tool, so that sales reps can incorporate that as an additional channel to contact sales, to contact providers, to contact physicians, and so on, to create touch points with them. And that can be many things. I mean, of course, it could be just reaching out to provider directly via direct message. But actually, I believe it's even stronger if you build that up over time, if you connect with them, comment on their content, know what they are talking about, and engage with them. And then at some point, you might also be in a position to reach out to them via LinkedIn or Twitter or any other channel. And then you might also see them at a conference again. And then you are in a position to have a much stronger connection with them and a much stronger conversation with them, which then might actually lead into them trusting you and trying out your product the first time. So we made omni-channel a real priority for our product, and will continue to do so. But I'm also curious about what you think from your experience, how to best incorporate social media touch points in marketing and sales approach towards providers.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, aside from like engaging with them on social and just raising awareness, I mean, something as simple as most providers, they are getting more active on LinkedIn and they have profiles, but like something as simple as like if a provider is posting a lot on Instagram, you as a rep going and commenting on that a few times, like they're going to notice your name because not a lot of comments are usually generated. And so as long as they're familiar with their name, when your email comes through to them, like it just raises your chances that you're going to open an email. It's the same thing when I helped companies raise money. A lot of it is just like, how do we raise awareness so people are familiar with the company and the name, so that when that founder goes out to investors to book a meeting or email them, they'll say, oh yeah, like I actually have heard of this company, right? It helped a lot with persuasion. I don't know if you guys do that now, and I don't know if you guys are allowed to do that because a lot of these social platforms are very specific about the data you can pull. But I would love if you guys ended up developing your own algorithms in the future on like scoring, like if somebody has like high activity on LinkedIn versus Instagram, or the combination of the two, and that way that would be really interesting, because I think that would be fascinating to see companies who can identify like, oh, this physician is doing this procedure volume, but like their online activity is actually very high. They might be really good for driving adoption, So I think sometimes you don't necessarily, like with the exception of like a surgeon who's doing massive volume, most doctors don't know who does a lot of procedures, right? And it doesn't really matter to them sometimes. All that really matters is like either they're people who are on podium or just people that they see online. And I think right now the people that they see online is a lot more persuasive, So
fully agree. So actually, it's interesting that you bring that up. Incorporating social media scoring is one of the things on our current development roadmap. So we're currently working on that.
Oh, sweet.
But what we're going to do is we basically incorporate insights from all sorts of different platforms, and then have like one social media score, which can point you in a direction towards who's more active, who's more relevant, who's less active and less relevant. But that's still in our R&D department, and looking forward to roll that out at some point.
How about the on the procedure side? You guys, so reps are able to like look via like CPT codes and everything. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like how would a rep like benefit and use that?
Yeah. So in our growth version of the tool, we do have procedure data incorporated for Medicare. We do have prescription data incorporated for Medicare. So that's another way of searching in our tool. So you could go in there and search for, show me the providers who do the most hip replacements, for example, or who do the most total knee, and so on. And they will show up. And we actually, to make that a little bit easier to search, we've actually also created a glossary where you're able to search through all the different CPT, HCPCS codes and prescription codes to actually identify those who are most relevant to you and your product. And then also see which are the ones who are actually being billed by providers. Because, I mean, as you know, there are like also quite a lot of codes out there which are actually not being billed that often. And then there are alternative codes which are used for similar procedures. So in that direction, our tool is sometimes also actually used still in the product development phase to actually identify what could be codes for reimbursement in the future. We always show like the market size of each individual code in Medicare, so you get a sense of the size of the price, to see, does it rather make sense to launch our first product in that subdomain or in that subdomain. So we're really differentiated when it comes to enabling that.
Got it. Something else that kind of hit me is that one of the things I think this could be helpful for is like for both bit larger companies and also startups is that a lot of times when you want to develop a product, like you want to justify like not only a market size but also procedure volume. It seems like you can essentially search procedure volumes and sort of justify whether a certain product is worth developing or not based on that. Is that correct?
That's possible. Yeah, that's totally possible. And that's a use case when we work together with pre-revenue startups, they often seek to get out of the tool in the beginning to get this sense of market size and opportunity size. But maybe to go one point back, what you mentioned before, I also believe, looking up procedure volumes is possible in our tool. It's a core feature. But then at the same time, I think in the industry, sometimes it's a little bit, sales and marketing are sometimes a little bit over obsessed with just the highest billers in an industry. And it gets, and my personal belief, after having talked to a few hundred sales reps now and hearing their stories, it sometimes gets really crowded around those top billers and everyone is focusing on the same.
Right.
And I believe like the holy grail is actually, and on top of finding those top billers who basically, in every niche, most people already know the top people anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's more about finding those hidden champions, those people who are up and rising, who have just entered the domain. And that's also possible in our tool. So you could do stuff like, okay, show me those who are billing that procedure code, but I only want to see people who are 5 years after graduation or 10 years after graduation, or the ones who are part of a certain medical society. Or the ones, there can also be some other proxies, which you wouldn't even think about. Like for example, even for implant companies, it might be interesting to filter for providers who do telehealth, because telehealth can be a proxy for identifying those who are more innovative, that those providers are already engaging with that.
That's a great point.
It's not always like the direct route to the person who does something, but sometimes developing auxiliary strategies can be really valuable, and it gives you an edge against your competition because everyone is running to the same person and you're actually to the one who's going to be that person in 5 years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think like something that's interesting, just like an idea is like, you can find a physician who, let's say, doesn't do high procedure volume for one thing, right? Like, let's say, I don't know, let's say it's like a knee replacement or something, right?
Yeah.
But let's just say that they're really high volume for another procedure. And as a result of that, they're like really well known, right? Yeah. It could be that if you get your product into their hands for the procedure that they're not really well known for, they're still going to get exposure to the same group of people who are, so like if it's a spine surgeon, they all do a certain group of procedures, right? So like one person who does one high volume procedure versus another, right? They're still, the whole idea is like exposure, right? And I think like this sort of simplistic thought is like, oh, let's go after like the big whales who are really known for the procedure. But those people are already like the J&Js and Medtronics and of the world are already in those guys' pockets. And so it's just gonna be a lot harder. So I think there's like the thing I like about your technology and your platform is like the idea around identifying the early adopter and being very creative with like adjacent strategies to driving adoption. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's you hit it on the nail. That's really what we try to do, to enable those adjacent strategies, and to help you those non-obvious people to approach. And then, I mean, just elaborating a little bit on the case, on the example you were just making. I mean, there's even more opportunity. I just had a client who's using our tool actually to look up all the customers they are already having on board, already having as customers, and then going into each of them and seeing what other procedures are they doing, and using this again for making decision on which product to develop next. Because of course it's much easier to already sell to your existing customers, and if you innovate in a domain where all your existing customers are already also in, then it's much easier to roll out the next product. So that use case actually, that came from that customer to us, and I was like, oh, that's really smart. I didn't actually think about that when we developed the product, but and I'm convinced there are like many use cases in that product still in there, which I've not yet figured out myself, because it's so multidimensional yet easy to use, that everyone who's starting using it gets out of their new strategies to use. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there was a concept we had kind of touched on in prior conversations about if you can kind of sort of expand on this, especially for a lot of the sales leaders who are not used to using these kind of platforms. But this concept around like power users sort of hogging all the insights versus, let's say, collaboration first tooling. Can you kind of talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's super interesting. I mean, in the initial phase of our startup, I actually reached out on LinkedIn to hundreds and hundreds of medical sales reps and regional sales managers and VPs of sales, and had like many of those discussions where I actually tried to find out what are they currently using, what their current operating mode, what do they like about the current solutions they have, what do they don't like, and especially also at larger companies who are using those incumbent solutions you talked about earlier. What often is the case that those data products are actually only in the hand of very few people within the organization. So there might be one person in marketing who has access to.
Is that because of the cost of it, or like
it's often because of the cost? It's one dimension, and then the other dimension is some companies tell me, yeah, well, we bought that, yeah, and then we also had to hire another data scientist to actually get the insights out of there. Yeah,
because they're complicated to use.
Sometimes they just get raw data and it's complicated to use, and it's not linked up with all the other insights. So they might buy, I mean, there's everything out there. Some people just buy a spreadsheet every quarter of billing data, but that's then not connected to their CRM system and all the other information in there. And we really, on the one hand side, as I said earlier, we are really linking up all those dimensions together. And then secondly, in our tool, it works a little bit like a CRM-like system, where you can have like one seat for the team lead, for example, and then multiple further seats for your team. And then you can actually start creating team lead lists collaboratively, and you can share them across the organization. And you can create campaigns in terms of, for example, write down a sales script for a certain cohort you just created. And then you can write that and attach that campaign to a certain lead list, kind of as a marching route on how you want your team to work on those leads. So it really enables working together easily. And we've tried to, and I think we are on a really good path of not making the tool too complicated. I mean, all of us, we've all used, CRM systems like Salesforce, HubSpot, and so in the past, and they are really great tools, and I'm using them myself, but they can get really overwhelming from the whole feature set. And then sometimes in the industry, I mean, people behind closed doors are saying those overloaded CRM systems kind of turn into a sales prevention machine, because it's more about tracking stuff than about actually learning about your customers and engaging with your customers. And we are trying to do the radical difference, having a simple to use yet powerful solution which salespeople actually like working in. And then it also, I mean, in the end, it also makes their life much easier because our tool is basically a pre-filled CRM. So all the base information, names, contact data, affiliation, and so on of providers are already in there. So you don't have to do all the manual filling of data fields. So it's much easier to engage with that.
Got it. And that makes sense. And I think, that's one of the problems with these sales enablement tools is that a lot of times there's too many features and way too many data points, for like an average person to know how to use it. Sorry, that's my wife and kid in the background in the backyard. But I think the biggest problem, and this happens, I think, with certain CRM systems, which is you invest in them. And so you already invested in them, right? But then you realize how complicated they are to use. And so you end up either hiring somebody, or more oftentimes it's like you add one more thing to marketing's plate to do internally. And, it just becomes really complicated. And a year later, it's kind of like, oh, we invest in this thing. We don't really use it. Sales doesn't really use it, And so again, like one of the things that stood out, because again, I want the industry to change, but I don't want it to change having to like go through the pain of like adopting really complex technologies. What I liked was, in terms of what I saw, and that's how I think all sales tools should be made, is like it's very simple and easy to use. Like a rep who's coming out of a case or like on the road and everything can just log in and look up what they got to look up, and it's like very clear and obvious. Like, I haven't been trained on it. And when you guys showed me the demo, I was like, I remember you guys were walking me through. I was like, hey, hold on, I'm going to tell you guys what to type in. And I started like telling you to type in. I was like, oh, this is like pretty straightforward,
Yeah, and I actually always carry it around on my tablet. Yeah, it's on the go. You can use it, look things up, and use it while you're in the car, driving to a hospital, for example. So we try to make that as easily usable as possible, and always have the salesperson in the front line in mind when building new features, and not an expert user in a data science BI department.
I completely so. And again, like you don't need to hire like an admin. Sometimes these databases like literally require you to hire an admin, or like hire like a contractor like out of India or Pakistan to help you like manage these things. So Paul, just kind of in like wrapping up, like what would be like sort of your big vision as a company, like if like 5 years from now, like how would you know that you guys accomplished like your mission as a company?
So, I mean, the most important KPI for me personally is like customers using that product successfully and coming back to me and telling me those stories, as I just told in the past, about how they use the product to actually bring out their innovations much faster. I mean, we are only an enabler in that industry. The real heroes out there are those innovators in medical device companies, in health tech startups, in the future, maybe also in pharmaceutical companies we might want to work with in the future, and so on. And we feel really dedicated in enabling those companies and those commercial teams in bringing those innovations they've built out to patients faster. Yeah. So that's I think the main vision for us at the moment. And then also on a different note, maybe coming a little bit back to the accessibility and of our product, where we try to make our price point transparent and be really easy to access. I think it's always a little bit the dirty secret in the industry somehow that some of the other companies they look at your company and no one knows, no one puts it on their website, and
tell us the dirty secret why that is. There's a very dirty secret as to why that is.
I mean, my personal opinion, and from what I've heard, I mean, I've talked to many different people and I've heard many different price points for every solution out there in the market. And my personal opinion is, though the dirty secret in the industry is that other companies, they look at your company, estimate how much revenue you make, and then give you a price point in that accordance. And we don't do that. We have our price point on our website. It's completely transparent. We just want to bring it out to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, and then get feedback from customers, make the product better every day, incorporate more data points, make it easier to use. And that's why we're not really playing in the same playing field as those other companies, because we try to make it just more accessible in the end.
Totally. I love that. Well, look, Paul, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I'm looking forward. We got to talk to do like a live stream because I want to demo the product and let reps see it. Maybe for the reps who are following that, follow Paul on LinkedIn, but then I think what will be interesting is to have a couple of reps. Maybe we can, select some that can come on and tell us what they want us to look up. But if you're interested, again, like I talked to Alpha Sophia and made it very clear, like, hey, like, I want the audience to get something of value. So go to alphasophia.com/Omar. That's ALPHASOPHIA.com/Omar. You see how well I practiced that? And just enter your information, and Paul and his team will meet with you. 20 minutes, probably less. Do a quick demo, but in that demo, really just you tell them either your territory, a surgeon, whatever you're looking for, and they'll give you those 3 profiles for free. So it's a great thing. You don't have to be a VP or anything. You can just be a rep and go do that. So that being said, we'll see you all next time, and have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Bye for now. Thank you for enjoying another epic episode of the State of MedTech. If you're feeling inspired and love this episode, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on so you never miss an episode. And be sure to give us 5 stars and write a short review because that helps more people discover this amazing community of ours. If you're a company who has a executive that you'd like to be on the show, or perhaps you want to sponsor one of the episodes, shoot us an email at hello@khateebandco.com. Take care, and we'll see you next time.